Alachua County Commissioner Ken Cornell is finishing his year as chair of the Alachua County Commission. He was born and raised in Gainesville, educated in the public school system, and while working full-time, graduated at the top of his class from the University of Florida's Fisher School of Accounting. He has owned and operated a number of small businesses in Alachua County. He was trained as a certified public accountant and is currently a broker associate and senior vice president with Bosshart Realty Services, LLC. Ken has a long record of positive involvement in many Alachua County businesses and community organizations. He's been married to his wife Angela for over 27 years and has 2 grown children. Welcome, Ken.
Thank you, Mark.
So we've moved out of our fiscal year. We're entering a new one. I thought this would be a good time to just sit down with you and talk about some of the highlights, particularly since our budget process got a little obscured this year with the visit from Hurricane Irma. So why don't we start with Hurricane Irma and the town hall meeting that you put together? Sure.
So first of all, with the hurricane, it was quite an opportunity for us to see how our community came together, and the intergovernmental cooperation was like none other. As part of the review of how we did, there are certainly a number of things that we need to improve on, and so the town hall was an opportunity to give citizens a chance to come speak to us about what we did well, but more importantly, what we can improve on. What I got out of that town hall mostly was that we have a number of legacy issues throughout our community related to primarily flooding and infrastructure. Our ditches, our drains, our culverts, our roads are things that this commission has made a priority, and future budget decisions about those areas will certainly be necessary.
And certainly it was no surprise that the majority of the folks that showed up at the town hall were people who had issues during the storm. And it was great that we had staff there from Public Works and from law enforcement and really all the different areas that you could steer the public to during the meeting.
Yeah, and having that interaction, not just obviously our sheriff's office, the sheriff was there, but also the city of Gainesville and GRU. There was a team of FEMA folks that are there, and they continue to provide support to our community, both at the individual level and soon to be at the public level. As you know, the president signed the public declaration for infrastructure, and so we recently did a budget amendment for $3 million, which was necessary to pay for some of the debris removal, and we will be putting in additional requests to repair much of our infrastructure that was impacted by the hurricane.
FEMA had a great presence also at the town hall meeting, and to this day they are still in town. I just talked with my counterpart at FEMA today. So they are still assisting citizens with individual assistance grants, helping small businesses. So that must have been very heartening to have them there.
It was. I remember I was walking into the town hall and there was a team of about 15 FEMA folks, and they were there primarily to help individuals get back on their feet. This hurricane for many was just a minor blip. Their power may have gone off for a couple of hours, but for many it was a big catastrophe that we're hopefully going to help them recover from, and FEMA has been great with regards to that. We will be dealing with FEMA on this storm for many, many years in the future as it relates to the public infrastructure, and so real pleased with our team with regards to documenting and responding to many of the public infrastructure challenges during, after, and going forward into the coming years.
Hurricane Irma had no respect for our budget process, and one of our public hearings actually took place while we were reacting to the storm. We had a very long, involved budget process this year, and can you share a little bit with the public about the number of meetings and the process that you went through?
Yeah, the budget is really the most important thing that we do. It's where our community's priorities get reflected in how we allocate funds. And so with that, this year, we again started a month early in order to make sure that we had a very transparent and public process. I think we had over 18 meetings, and I think that's the way to do it. We'll do that again, hopefully next year. It's important for us to hear from the citizens because priorities from them, it's their money. How we spend their money is important, and so their input to making those decisions are critical.
Yeah, the old saying is, show me your budget and I'll tell you your priorities, and that's certainly the case here.
Yeah.
So there was some good news on the millage rate front and the general fund millage rate, which is the county-wide millage rate that everyone in Alachua County pays.
Yeah, so the county was fortunate that our values continue to appreciate. And so when we received that information from the property appraiser, the decision was, now what? And this county commission voted unanimously to roll back the millage rate to 8.4, which is about a half a mil. And I don't believe the commission's done that since the early 90s, other than 1 year when they were required to do it. What it says to me is that every dollar is important, in that your government needs to make sure that they're spending your dollars correctly. And so due to the fact that we had appreciation in a number of property values, we were able to do that while still funding a number of our high priorities.
Speaking of priorities being reflected in the budget, the public safety portion of Alachua County's budget represents over half of the total general fund dollars. So talk to us a little bit about public safety and the importance of that.
So the hurricane showed that public safety is obviously at the top of our list with regards to importance. Our sheriff's budget was handled this year in a collaborative way. Obviously, she put in a request and perhaps didn't get everything she wanted, but on the flip side of that, there was a number of compromises made, and the commission voted unanimously to approve her budget, and that was important. Working with our sheriff is critically important to keeping our community safe, and that continues to be a high priority of this commission. In addition, our fire rescue is also an incredibly high priority of this commission, and so we allocated the necessary funds for our firefighters, as well as the investment into the county's master plan to deploy fire and rescue resources into our community in accordance with our master plan. We recently opened a new fire station out in Waldo and opened a new rescue station on 34th Street close to 441.
And I know that we added a peak load unit. We added a couple last year, but another one this year.
Yeah, another peak load unit. Again, when it comes to rescue, when people dial 911, minutes matter. And so making sure that those resources are spread out throughout the community so that they can respond quickly and effectively for transport is critically important.
The board also made a decision this year to go from the municipal services taxing unit as a way to fund fire. You abolished that tax and instituted the fire assessment. Great deal of conversation, a robust conversation among the community. What was important to communicate there was, regardless of which way we did that, it was designed to raise the same amount of money.
Yeah, I mean, that was a critical point that this commission wanted to make sure they communicated. And I think we also committed that we don't want to raise the fire assessment, that we want to continue to collect the same amount that we would have collected under the MSTU and the projected increases in the MSTU. So that was number one. Number two, when you look at some of the smaller communities and their millage rates, with the projected increase in the MSTU, they would either have gotten very close to or exceeded their 10 mil cap, which would require significant cuts in their general funds. And so this is something that the commission spent a lot of time on, talking throughout the community, making sure that if we were going to do a fire assessment, that it was the most progressive fire assessment as possible. There is a base rate that everybody pays, and then the larger the home, the more you will pay on the fire assessment, which is a way to minimize the impacts to our most vulnerable citizens. In addition, we came up with a number of hardships, which will allow for folks that are most vulnerable to get assistance with regards to that fee. But you're right, it was a way to diversify our revenue streams and eliminate the MSTU fire. We also eliminated the MSTU unincorporated. And so simplifying the tax bill for folks so they can read it and understand it was really important to this commission.
One of the long-term challenges is the radio system, the communication system that both the sheriff and fire rescue uses. That's a massive project. Tell us what the commission was doing about that this year.
So again, this is a legacy issue. We've got a communication system which is at my highest priority with regards to the upcoming year. When our first responders can't communicate, bad things happen. And so this radio system was projected to carry us through, I believe, 2018, and so here we are. So there's an RFP out on the street to look at that. And this is something that we have got to focus on as a community, not just the county commission, but everyone that participates in the Combined Communication Center, because we've got to make sure that law enforcement can speak to fire rescue, and fire rescue can speak to our transport, and so the radio communication system is critical to this community.
So Ken, the board in the last several years has made a very deliberate decision to increase the general fund contribution to roads. Gas tax is obviously limited in its effectiveness because of no indexing. It doesn't go up as prices go up. Cars are becoming more fuel efficient, so you've been looking for ways to help tackle the road issue. So tell us about what you've done with roads this year.
People want their roads fixed, and as I talked about early on, you know, it's not just roads, it's ditches, drains, and culverts, and so we need to fix roads. The county has, while I've been on the commission, every single year increased its commitment to providing road maintenance dollars, to fixing our roads, and we are currently negotiating with the city of Gainesville a long-term agreement for the gas tax, which would provide at least an agreement between the two entities, the county and the city, with regards to how much gas tax money will be collected to fix our roads. The county's major priority is the repaving of roads. The city's major priority is transit. And so our interests are different with regards to how those monies are used. But this county commission is committed to continuing to increase putting money into fixing our roads. The most public one, of which of course is Tower Road. And I've been told that that will begin in the coming year to fix Tower Road, which is long overdue.
Right. Shifting gears a little bit, one of the most exciting things that I think the county is doing is funding the Children's Services Advisory Council or Committee. And they've got some projects that are coming very soon that are exciting. You all made the budget decision to fund them last year. You have matched that funding again. I think it's $1.25 million this year. Yep. But for folks who are not aware of that, tell us about the Children's Services Advisory Committee.
Yeah, so it's really investing in the future of our community. When you think about what's the most important investment we can make, a child's brain is 85 to 90% developed in the first 5 years of life. We know that. And so investing in that time period and making sure that those kids have the same opportunity as everybody else with regards to learning, nutrition, and safety is as an important investment as we can make. And so last year we started this. This year we continued it, and you will begin to see in the community now programs being rolled out that the Children's Advisory Council is recommending to make sure that children from really prenatal to 5 have an opportunity to succeed.
One program that I think is fascinating is the home visit program. Everyone who brings a new baby home will have the opportunity to have an expert come into their house. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so that's an incredible initiative. So every child born will have what you just said, the opportunity to have a home nurse come to the home, and evaluate the different needs that the family may have with regards to caring for that child, and then refer them out to the many organizations that are available in this community that folks may just not know about. And so it's been well documented that is a key to one of the successes. It's been done in other communities, and so working with our local hospitals, our local nonprofit providers, I'm really excited about that opportunity, because some folks don't need any help when they come home, but we also know that there are a number of folks that do, and the child is born into the community, and so sometimes it takes a village to help raise that child, and so we want to make sure that those resources are available so that when they get to kindergarten, when they turn 5 and start school, that they're ready. And it sounds crazy, they're ready for kindergarten, because that is the key to their development, knowing that 85 to 90% of their brain is developed.
And of course that ties into the other major initiative, which is to help train the people that are teaching our children in daycare. Tell us about that effort.
Yes, training the trainers, training the teachers, training the parents.
Yeah.
Well, I remember when my son was born, I was 23 years old. I had no idea about being a parent. Fortunately, I was married to an early childhood education teacher, and so reading DeConner and Chris, that's what we did, and certainly making sure that those synapses are formed at an early age is critically important. And so it's important that we help teach mothers and child care providers and individuals that are interacting with our youngest citizens.
We are so fortunate to be living in a college town, and the group of people that you all appointed to this committee are just really kind of a who's who of
world-renowned.
experts.
I mean, truly are world-renowned, and the I didn't mean to interrupt, but the alliance with the University of Florida and this whole initiative, having the latest and greatest research, and having a real partnership with UF, the county, the city, the child care providers, Early Learning Coalition, so many names, and having the latest and greatest information available to our citizens, you're right, is truly fortunate, and we believe will really create a model, not just for how communities can do this around our state, but around our country.
Ken, one of the things that just makes me really proud to work at the county is the efforts that have been made on living wage. And I know that's near and dear to your heart and a number of our commissioners' hearts. Tell us about the progress that the county is making on paying a living wage.
Sure. First and foremost, I view the living wage as a jobs plan. I know that when you put an extra dollar or 50 cents into those that are working and at the lowest end of the pay range, that money immediately gets put usually right back into the local economy. They go to a restaurant or they buy their kids a pair of shoes. And so local jobs is, again, one of this commission's highest priorities. And so paying a higher local government minimum wage on our way to a living wage is certainly a high priority of mine, and I believe this entire commission. So we started this path a couple of years ago, and this last budget year we raised the local government minimum wage from $12.50 to $13. I think that's important for our lowest paid employees, and we'll hopefully continue that path into next year.
I know this also, a lot of the vendors we work with, certain categories of vendors, they participate in this as well.
Yeah, and it's been really well received. I haven't heard really many complaints from vendors. Vendors that choose to do business with Alachua County, we ask that they pay their employees. And we believe that, again, that's not just good for the employees, but it's good for our local economy. And I'll tell you, Mark, it's actually saving the taxpayers money. What we found in the first year that we started doing this is that our turnover went down, our training costs went down, and those costs associated with hiring and retraining our lowest paid employees, the savings from that was actually more than the cost to actually raise their pay. And so I think it's good for the taxpayers too, so it's good for everyone.
One of the great events this year that we had at the county was the opening of the Public Defender's Building. You spoke. Stacy Scott, our public defender, had a very moving speech that she talked about. So tell us why that was important to the commission to make that kind of investment.
Sure. Another gift of our community, right? Stacy Scott. I mean, she's well known throughout the state with regards to the public defenders, and we're very fortunate to have her in our community. And the best statement that she had that I continue to preach throughout our community is equal justice for all. And that's just a concept that obviously she deeply believes in, and this commission deeply believes in. And so the new building, the new public defender building, is in accordance with the county's master plan to try to bring all of court services into one centralized location. And so that was an important step, and we completed it in the last year. And you know, it's interesting, as the chair, you get certain opportunities to cut ribbons and make speeches, and oftentimes it's from decisions that were made long before I was even on the commission. And so previous commissioners had the wisdom to move that forward, and I just was lucky enough to cut the ribbon that day.
Wild Spaces Public Places was passed in 2016, and it was kind of fascinating to watch this year the way the county commission was able to take up or take advantage of a couple of opportunities that would have slipped away if we hadn't had those funds. Tell us a little bit about Camp McConnell and
Sure.
how that evolved.
Yeah, so Wild Spaces, you know, our state legislators, our senators and our representatives said, if you want local dollars, you know, if you want state dollars, you need to have a local match. And so that whole initiative was largely generated by and supported by them. And so with that, we are being presented with opportunities now for matching state and federal funding to acquire property. Camp McConnell came up as something that was an opportunity for us to acquire through an auction. We are now going through a process of interacting with the public to figure out what is the best use of this property from a recreational and a conservation perspective. And we're looking for public's input, because we may not keep it long term. But we are controlling now that asset with regards to the public's asset and the public's land. And so, yeah, we acquired it, and we'll see if we end up keeping it or end up selling it while conserving or putting conservation easements over certain parts of it.
And then another amazing opportunity was this CSX Rail Trail that was, or railroad line that was recently abandoned. Going between High Springs and the city of Newberry. A trail really that's almost as long as the Hawthorne Trail, which is certainly an incredible facility. So tell us about the board's decision in that.
Yeah,
regard.
so that, you know, that went back and forth, as you remember, and there's a lot of public input to that. Trails are important when they're connected. So this connects a number of critical regional trails, and we're going to be looking for some matching funding for the building out of that trail. The Wild Spaces Public Places commitment was to secure the land through the participation with the city of High Springs. It's incredibly important to the city of High Springs. And so that was another case where we didn't really get it right on the first try, but through the public's interaction and process, we came up with a solution that involved actually less money being spent and more partnerships being developed through that process. And so it's going to be a great project, long-term project. You know, the trail is going to need additional funding through the state's trail system, but we feel like now that we own that property and have secured those right-of-ways, that we should rank very high with regards to connectivity in the statewide trail system.
I certainly didn't want to let this interview go by without talking about the Fairgrounds, because there have been a lot of pieces, moving parts this year that have kind of come into play, including our relationship with Weyerhaeuser, the old Fairgrounds, the new Fairgrounds. We're asking our state delegation for some help again this year, but bring us up to date on the Fairgrounds.
So we could do the whole show on just the fairgrounds.
Yes, we
I mean,
could.
the fairgrounds is a 30-year commitment, first and foremost, to our agricultural community, and right behind it to our East Gainesville community. It is the centerpiece for Plan East Gainesville, the relocation of the fairgrounds to the Weisman track, and again, commending previous commissions' foresight into seeing that that was important. They acquired the Weisman track, and so the fairgrounds will be moved to the Weisman track in the coming years as we're building the new fairgrounds. And then the transition of the current corner on 39th Avenue and Waldo Road into a commercial job center, which is critical to Plan East Gainesville. Through discussions with Weyerhaeuser, they are interested in that process, and so we have an agreement that's hopefully going to be finalized very soon, which will allow for a swap of some of their conservation property that that the county has an interest in from a connectivity standpoint, and then they would take over those 100 acres to then develop in accordance with Plan East Gainesville. The building of the new fairgrounds out on the Weisman track is going to be really a regional facility, a facility that will be over 80,000 square feet, will provide for not just agricultural fairground events, something that we've never really had in this community to the extent that this community has deserved, but also sporting events. There's going to be an indoor track. There's going to be the ability to do lots of things in the fairgrounds. And so the hurricane identified the need for us to probably harden that facility. So we have requested that the state provide a small $2.5 million match to a $28.5 million project.
It's going to be an incredible project.
Yeah, and again, I could talk.
I know.
Yeah, so.
We'll do a part two.
All right, maybe we'll do a part two on the fairgrounds.
But, well, thank you so much for joining us and talking to the citizens about a kind of a comprehensive look at what's coming up and what we've done recently. Thank you so much, Ken.
Thank you, Mark. Appreciate it.
So who's going to do what?
I'll pack the dead batteries.
Great.
I'll only put what I don't need into a duffel bag.
Perfect. That's totally unhelpful.
No problem.
Meanwhile, I will try to comfort everyone by speaking in a calm voice. And who is going to handle supplies?
I can forget to do a list for us.
Thanks, pal.
We couldn't be any less prepared. I'm proud of you guys.
Talk to your kids about who to call, where to meet, what to pack. Visit ready.gov/kids for tips and information.
She seemed really depressed.
Just seemed so isolated. Wishes that she was never born. And
So I knew he had depression, but I didn't know it was that far.
He said something to me about killing himself.
I didn't know what to do because I kind of thought, oh, he's going to be mad at me.
Tell somebody, tell an adult, counselor, parent, whatever.
It would have been horrible for me if she never talked to me again, but I'd live with it because I know she'd be alive.
Definitely worth getting help, even if you think you're going to lose a friendship, because it's better to lose the friendship than the actual friend.